I mean, at the end of the day, the Palestinian people have to live somewhere. And, I don't think it's a great idea for Israel to try to occupy Gaza. I'm not sure what that looks like. So can we take this pause? Can we think about what might a two-state solution look like and start that conversation?
A two-state solution, boy, and it feels far away at the moment. The administration has received a lot of criticism from many progressive Democrats about the way that this war is being comported, even though that it is not the U.S. conducting this battle, but full-throated support for Israel while thousands of Palestinian civilians die. You can look at this one way or the other. It's very easy to blame Hamas in this case. The Biden administration would tell you that's what we should do. But it creates a political problem for him on the left. What do you hear from your colleagues in the House?
Hamas clearly instigated this war, so that there's no debate about who started this war.
Completely.
And Israel clearly has the responsibility to protect its civilians and make sure something like October 7th doesn't happen again. That said, you do see the massive humanitarian crisis taking place, the loss of life. It's heart-wrenching to see children being pulled out of rubble and so forth. So, I think President Biden's been very clear in the U.S. focus. Obviously, we will continue to help Israel secure its security, moving the aircraft carriers into the region. We are making sure this doesn't extend or expand into another front. So that is also clear to our mission. And then, the attacks on our troops and others in the region, we have to respond to that as well.
Well, what are you hearing on your committees? And I suspect it's both of them at this point, but I imagine that the Intelligence Committee has been quite a wealth of information, most of which you probably cannot share with me right now. But do you think that the presence of these two carrier groups helped to avoid a second front? Would Iran have been involved in this now if the U.S. hadn't acted the way it did?
I think moving the assets very quickly has really, there's an initial concern about Hezbollah perhaps getting involved here. We haven't really seen that. You've seen missile launches and so forth, but not a full-scale involvement. And then you have Iranian proxy groups in Syria, in Iraq, the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Again, I think we, along with others, have been doing what we have to do to make sure this doesn't spread.
Many have suggested, and it's not just now, it's part of being the president of the United States. There are things that the president knows that we will never imagine. And people question the president's demeanor when he walks into a room. Why does he look tired today? Why does he seem angry with reporters? What kind of information is he hearing when he's briefed in the morning or when he interacts with intelligence officials right now?
Being president of the United States probably is the hardest job in the world. And think about it. There's two real hot conflicts going on in this world. You've got the illegal invasion by Russia of Ukraine. And, I met with some Ukrainian civilians and healthcare professionals earlier this week, and they just talk about the atrocities that they're coming across and what's happening, and they're about to enter another winter, so that's got to weigh on the president. And now crisis in the Middle East, and trying to get the hostages back to diplomacy, all at the same time where last week he was meeting with Xi Jinping, trying to find a path forward to avoid conflict in Asia. So incredibly challenging job. I think the president's been doing a great job.
This is why they say it's not for the faint of heart, or not necessarily for an old man. Do you worry about his ability to do that for another 4 years?
I think he's been a great president, and you don't hear people criticizing the job. I equate age with experience, and he's the most experienced president that we've had. And I think the voters should look at his record of achievement. And if you look at that record of achievement, we've got the strongest economy in the world. Unemployment is way down. Wages are rising. And then with these conflicts around the world, and as someone on intelligence and foreign policy, I think he's doing a great job keeping a world